I remember I saw her that day. She'd been coming to my church for, I guess, about 8 months, and she would always come in late. And by her own confession, I didn't know this. She would come in late. At that time, I was pastoring a church that had this huge balcony. She would come in late. She would go up. She didn't even have to come into the sanctuary to come into the balcony. She would go up the back steps. She would go up and she'd sit on the back row. And she would always leave early. And she never revealed herself at all. For 8 months, she attended Hickory Grove Baptist Church, and she never filled out a visitor's card or anything. I didn't even know that she had been there. But a few years later, I saw her. I was in a revival, and she came up to me, and she told me that story. And she told me what all had gone on in her life, and she said, I was devastated, and I just didn't feel like living. I didn't feel like I was worth anything. I felt worthless. But she said, every Sunday I would come to your church, and I would come up in the balcony, and I would listen like a dying man wanting air, like a thirsty woman wanting drink. I would listen to what you would say, and then I would leave, and that would give me enough to make it through that day. But then about Friday or Saturday, it just got worse and worse and worse. But then she said, there's something happened to me. I learned in that process to feed myself. So that's what we want to do right now. We're wanting to give you Psalm 21 so you can feed yourself. God can have this conversation, and that you can, and if this helps you, then if you want to say something, just thank God for it, that he's provided this for it. And what I want you to know is you can't hide from God. If you belong to God, you can't hide from God. He sees you. He made you. He knows what color your eyes are. He knows you. He's got that facial reconstruction down pat. He knows your DNA. He gave it to you. He knows your fingerprints. And he's looking at you, and he says right now, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I am your comforter. Sometimes he does ease our pain because he does not want us to have more on us than we can stand. And he eases our pain. And sometimes he brings conviction into our soul. Conviction is not a bad term. Doesn't mean I'm doing wrong. It means I can just do so much better. To turn to God and be with God. And you can't hide from God. That's what David is saying here in Psalm 21. He's already said to us, it's in Psalm 20, it's one of those what we call the royal psalm. The king shall have joy in your strength, O Lord. It is God and God alone. You can't hide from God. If you're sitting on a throne, you're not going to be higher than God. But if you're sitting in a pit, you're not going to be lower than God. He is all around you, and he comforts you, and he takes care of you. And in verse 6 of Psalm chapter 21, he says that God has made King David most glad, where? In the presence of God, and that God has made the king most glad in the blessing of God. David found peace and joy in the blessing of God. And you're going to find that peace and joy in the presence of God as you serve other people. You love God, and he gives you the power and the ability and the motivation to love others. We need this in our society today. We really don't like each other, do we? And it's because of some perceived problem that happened 500 years ago. My goodness sakes alive. How can I hold you responsible for something that happened 500 years ago? Let's don't get into that. Life is too short. So let's just love each other. And if somebody does you wrong, and if somebody's just horrendous and everything, get away from them. Get away from them and get with people that you can love, and people that will make a difference in your life. And don't focus on your problems. Don't focus on your injustices. Don't focus on yourself. Focus on God. And while you're doing that, share this with somebody else. Whatever you get out of this, read Psalm 21 and call somebody and tell them what you got out of Psalm 21. Tell them what you're praying, because the more you pray about this, the bigger it gets, and the more you share it, the more it's multiplied. That's just the math of God. So I want you to be joyful in the Holy Spirit today, and God bless you. Thank you so much for being with us, and I hope you have a glorious, glorious day.